Eagle 7 here, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate tuning the ADF to an Ndb frequency, navigating to an Ndb, and we'll initiate a fictitious Ndb approach into the Kobuleti Airport. Here's my fictitious Ndb approach into the Kobuleti Airport. So we're southeast of the airport, heading northwest. We're going to track the ADF inbound. We're going to cross over the Ndb radio beacon, and we're going to enter into a left-hand holding pattern. Our outbound leg will be 250 degrees. We'll fly it for 1 minute. We'll make a standard rate turn to our inbound heading of 070. Cross over the Ndb, start our descent down to 500 feet. We'll fly at 500 feet until we reach the runway threshold, and we'll land on the numbers. Okay, back in the aircraft. The first thing we want to do is make sure our CMWS switch is in the nav position so we can get the audible Morse code tone from the Ndb. We'll go down to our MPD. I like to turn the visibility down slightly on the screen. We're going to go to TSD, then up to Instrument, then over to Utilities page, and at the bottom make sure turn our ADF on. Then go over to Frequency, and then go over to our keypad unit, where we'll enter our Ndb frequency of 870.00, and then click Tune, and now you can see we have 870.0 in the box with the Morse code. The next thing I like to do is go to Utilities, then Center, back up to Map, over to Orientation, North up, back to Instrument, and down for our heading. This is going to be our inbound course, 070. Over to the keypad, we'll enter 070, enter, and we have our clock for timing the approach. So let's get started. Recage our standby attitude indicator, turn on our IHADs, adjust the brightness, and on the left MPD I like to bring up the flight page as our artificial horizon as a backup to the IHADs. Bring up our joystick box, and from here we'll just initiate a normal takeoff. Lowering the nose, accelerating through 40 knots, climbing at approximately 70 knots, up to our cruising altitude of 1,000 feet. So there we'll level off at 1,000 feet and cruise at 90 knots. When doing an instrument approach, we want to have a consistent airspeed for our timing purposes. And when we're in instrument conditions, all turns are at standard rate. And for you that are interested, a standard rate turn can be calculated with true airspeed divided by 10 plus 7. So in this particular scenario, where we're traveling at 90 knots, we divide by 10, so 9 plus 7 is 16 degrees. Our bank angle should be roughly 16 degrees for a standard rate turn. So now as we're tracking the ADF, you can see the ADF indicator on the heading tape on the I-heads and also on the standby attitude indicator on the left MPD. It's a hash mark with a little ball in it. As long as we keep that centered, that means we're tracking or homing to the Ndb station. So as we reach the cruising altitude here of 1,000 feet, pitching for 90 knots, I think it's around 50 or 54% torque. I'll speed the en route portion up here for us and get us a little bit closer to the Ndb. So now as we're coming up on the Ndb, what we're looking for is station passage. So we want to make sure we hold a very stable heading, a solid heading. You see the Ndb indicator start to move off to the left side of the heading tape, and if you look down at the MPD, you can see that ADF dotted line is now moving. That means we're crossing over the Ndb station. So once we cross over the station, now we want to enter into our left hand standard rate turn to an outbound heading of 250 degrees, which is the reciprocal of our inbound heading of 070, which is our runway heading for Kobuleti. So as we continue in the standard rate turn, we're coming up on 250. We want to lead that turn a little bit. We start rolling out before we get to 250. We want to stay within plus or minus 10 degrees of 250. Now I started the clock. We're going to fly outbound for 1 minute, still maintaining our 1,000 feet and 90 knots. We're keeping an eye on the clock on the right MPD, counting up to 1 minute. When we're instrument flying, we want to make sure that our headings and our altitude are as precise as possible. So there's 1 minute. We start our standard rate turn to the left while we're coming around to our inbound course of 070. And we're going to track that inbound towards the Ndb station, still maintaining our 1,000 feet and our 90 knots and our coordinated standard rate turn. Now you can see the ADF indicator on the heading tape start to come closer to center. Again, we want to start to roll wings level slightly before our heading of 070. We want to maintain that 070 plus or minus 10 degrees. And now we're flying inbound towards the Ndb station, maintaining our 1,000 feet, 90 knots, until we get station passage. It'll be indicated by the ADF marker on the heading tape. Will start to move, and on the MPD you'll see the dashed line start to spin. That means we're passing directly over the ADF or the Ndb station. Now the closer we get to the Ndb, the more sensitive it is. So this is where heading control becomes very important. We don't want to be drifting off too far to the left or too far to the right. We want to make sure we stay on our heading of 070 so that when we start to cross over the Ndb and we get that station passage and the needles start to move on us, we don't want to chase those needles. Now you can see the ADF marker on the heading tape starting to slide really fast to the left. You look down at the MPD, the dotted lines are moving. That means we've crossed over the NDB. Now we're going to start our descent. And on a non-precision approach, you want to be about 600 to 800 feet per minute. You want to get down kind of fast because we're trying to get down to our MDA, or our minimum descent altitude. So we want to get down and level off. We want to get down to 500 feet and level off. Tracking our ADF outbound 070. And now what we're doing is we're looking for the airport. On a non-precision approach like an NDB, it's not like an ILS where it will take you right to the runway threshold. It can actually be offset by several degrees. So that's why they're called non-precision. But now we're down at 500 feet, 90 knots. I have the aircraft environment, or the airport environment in sight. So now we transition from an approach to a VFR approach now, visual approach. Continue our descent now below our MDA. We have the airport environment in sight, so we can descend below MDA, minimum descent altitude. And we begin our normal approach to the runway numbers. Lowering our collective, right pedal, aft cyclic. Remember to get the aircraft slowed up, get our walking speed, and then walk the helicopter in, working the collective, working the cyclic, working the pedals, looking at your point of intended landing, and then making adjustments to the controls to make a nice, smooth, stable descent to the numbers. Working our collective, our pedals, a little forward on the cyclic here, little increasing of the collective, kind of arrest that rate of descent, and set it right down on the numbers. So I hope that helps with the ADF, NDB navigation, and a ADF approach into an airport. And we'll see you on the next one.